How's it going, everyone? This is Tim from Fringe Sport, and in this video, I'm going to be taking you step by step on how to assemble the Walrus, our brand new all-in-one lat pull-down tower low-row combo. It goes up to 320 pounds. It's a 1-to-1 pulley ratio, the perfect all-in-one back machine for your home gym. We realized that a ton of you loved our Day 2 instruction assembly video, so we'd like to do that for all of our newer pieces going forward, which means, yes, we are going to be releasing some new things very soon. Stay tuned for that. But we realized that reading instructions off a piece of paper might not be the best format, and it's easier for people to follow along step by step. So that's exactly what we'll be doing in this video. I'll be taking things very slowly, and if you're stuck on a specific part, I'll leave all timestamps right here on the side of the screen, as well as down below in the description box. So let's get started with the assembly of the Walrus.
First thing I want to go over is hardware, because I think separating everything out will make this process a lot easier. For your M24 bolts, these will be your chrome plated ones. You'll have two 120mm bolts. These will be a little bit longer, and 10 110mm bolts. For your longer black bolts, you'll have 4 of the 120, 4 of the 105, and 4 of the 100. For the smallest bolts, you're going to have 2 M12s, 2 M10s, and 4 M8s.
First, we're going to start building the back of the Walrus, and to do that, we're going to need the upright, both of the extension feet, the connecting plate that's more in the shape of a triangle, the trolley right here, and for the hardware, we'll be using both of the longer bolts and 4 of the shorter bolts, and each of these are going to have 2 washers and 1 nut on them. Since we're laying the upright down, we want this plate facing up, since this is going to be the back of the unit. So first thing we're going to do is take each of the extension feet and line them up with the bottom and the 4th holes on the upright. Then we're going to take those longer bolts and put them through the top and the bottom. Then take 1 washer for each of those and 1 nut. And we do say this every video, we don't want to tighten these with tools just yet. We're going to tighten them just by hand. So about 50 to 60% tightness, just until we get everything else assembled. Now that both extension feet are connected to the upright, we could stand this whole thing up, and we could focus on the connecting plate right here. To make things a little bit easier for the connecting plate, I took one of the shorter bolts and already put it through, and we're going to focus on just 1 extension foot at a time. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where this first bolt is going to go. And we can just let that rest and follow the remaining holes. There should be 4 bolts used in total. All right, we've got the back support of the Walrus fully assembled now, and before we move on to the next step, we're going to be taking the trolley and putting this on, because this is a step that even I forget sometimes, and the last thing you want to do is fully assemble everything and then you forget to put the trolley on. So we'll just do that really quickly, and you want this plate right here with the holes to be on the inside of the unit. And we'll just move that to the bottom to get out of the way for now. For this next step, we're going to grab the longest cross member that we have that is going to attach to this back upright. And you'll know it's the right one by the band pegs right here. And these are going to go closest to the back of the unit. So once you have this and get it as close to there as possible, you'll be grabbing 2 bolts, but one of them is going to have 1 nut and 2 washers. And like I had mentioned before, one of them is going to have pretty much nothing on it. It's just going to be the bolt and 1 washer. Just to get this held in place, we're going to pick up that cross member, and we're going to put this first bolt in the 3rd hole through the back of the unit. Then we could get the 1 washer and the nut and hand tighten that down. And this 1 bolt with the 1 washer is just going to go through the bottom hole, and there is a pre-threaded portion of the upright. So you'll just get that in there as much as you can, and don't be worried if it doesn't tighten all the way. That's what the tools are for later. But in this case, it was tightened all the way. Next, we're going to be mounting this center upright with 2 pulleys attached to it. This is pretty much going towards the front of the unit, but especially if you're doing this by yourself, things can be made a little bit easier by fastening these 2 connecting plates first. So let's take care of that. For this, you're going to need both of the connecting plates, and you'll know which way to orient them One, because the notch right here is supposed to go above this bolt, but two, these two holes at the top are going to be closest to the back of the unit. So you're going to need both of these connecting plates and 2 out of the 4 medium bolts. Like I had mentioned earlier in the video, these come in 3 different sizes, so you want to grab the middle option. So you're just going to thread both of those through and get them through center right there. Take the other connecting plate, get those through, then take a washer for each, and the nuts with the Loctite. These don't have to go through all the way, especially since these have Loctite on them, but just get them tight enough so this won't move on you too much. Now we could stand this upright up. We'll just pick it up and line it up with the 2 holes that are on that cross member. And another way to know that it's facing the right way, this curved channel right here is going to be facing towards the front of the machine. Now let's get the rest of this bolted in. Once these 2 holes line up, you're just going to take the other 2 medium length black bolts and get those through the top and the bottom. Get those other 2 washers and the other 2 nuts and just hand tighten those down. Then on the top right here, you're going to notice 2 more holes, and of the tiniest black bolts, you're going to take the largest ones and you'll just thread those through the top, and then the center portion of the Walrus will be done. Since we're assembling the top of the unit now, this is where things can start to get a little bit tricky, especially if you're doing things by yourself. But you're going to be grabbing this cross member to connect the center upright and the back upright together. And you'll know which way is the correct orientation because of these holes right here. The smaller ones are going to go towards the center cross member, the center upright, excuse me, and the larger holes are going to go to the back upright. And because I'm by myself, I'm going to put the bolts in first, and they'll be going in holes 1. And you're going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4. So holes 1 and 4 for the back upright. One other thing I forgot to mention, do not put this upside down. You'll know which way is the correct way because of this rectangular channel right here. This should be facing up, and these holes should be facing down. So I'm making sure that this channel is up, and I'll just fasten it right there. And it's not going to go anywhere. Then just grab a couple of washers and some nuts. Lift it up a little bit. Get 1 washer on with 1 nut. And now that's got more security, I could let that go. And just do 1 more washer with 1 nut. And now we'll grab the hardware for this upright. For this center upright, we're going to be grabbing more of the black bolts, and these are the smallest ones. The larger ones are going to be saved for the seat. I'm going to show you later in the video, but let's just focus on this right now. So you might have to maneuver the cross member a little bit, but just thread this through. That's the top one. Get that through. For the bottom one, and remember, these need washers on the outside and on the inside. So bolt, washer, washer, nut, and same thing for the bottom. Just add the washer and the nut. Now, aside from the cable routing, this is probably the most difficult part of the installation if you're doing this by yourself, but we'll be taking the shroud and the pulleys and mounting these on top. And don't worry, it should just slide right on through. Can't see me right there, but you can just let that go. It's not really going to be going anywhere. It's just really cumbersome to get this up here. But to finish this off, we'll be grabbing our remaining 2 bolts. And if you pay attention to the back upright, that's where we'll be putting these bolts. So we've got the 1 and 2. And just add the washers and the nuts. And for this portion right here on the center uprights, we'll be taking those 2 remaining smaller black bolts and threading these through the proper holes. You might just have to lift up the shroud a bit, but since it's supported by the back upright being secured, this should be pretty easy. And once you've got those through, just like the 2 before, each of them get a washer and a nut. Now we can take a little bit of a break from the big portion of the unit and focus on the smaller stuff. So what we're doing right now is getting the seat fully attached. So take the pad itself, place that upside down on the ground, and you're gonna take the base and line it up with those 4 holes on the bottom. Then once those are lined up, take the smallest bolts, and those are going to be used to fasten the cushion to the frame. This is one of those things where you could fully tighten it if you want to with tools, but for the sake of the video, I'm just going to leave these hand tightened to speed everything up. One thing I need to make mention of really quickly, when you're assembling this seat and really any other part of the unit, you might notice these little metal pegs that pop out and they fill in these slots right here. Make sure you do not lose these. These are the components that come with zip ties on them. So if you notice that one is missing, find it before moving on to the next step and put it back in its place. To make connecting the seat a lot easier, we're going to take these rods or plates and fasten them to the unit first on the bottom. So that's one, then get the second one and thread that through. And you can just leave those hanging right now. Then you're going to take one washer and the nut and fasten them like that. Then you can just move those 2 out of the way and do the same thing on the other side. If these ever pop out, like I'd mentioned before, just put them back in their proper slots. To make securing the seat a lot easier, I recommend doing this with the seat on top of the unit. So we're just going to line these rods up and just get one started, and then the rest should come pretty easy. So that's one in, and that's 2. I went ahead and tightened the seat as well as these rods right here, because I almost forgot to mention one thing that you need to keep in mind for this seat. In order for it to move relatively smoothly up and down like that when you're switching from lat pull downs to low rows, you cannot tighten these to 100%, otherwise it's going to get stuck, for lack of better words. So when tightening these down, make sure you're doing it to about 90 to about 92 or 93%. Do not do it 100%. However, for the cushion, of course, tighten that 100%. You've got the seat taken care of. Now it's time for the leg pad slash footrest slash what you need to move up and down the unit for your exercises. So I prematurely did this, but you should notice that there is this black rod that's threaded on both sides that comes with all the materials. So you're going to take this rod, and this slot right here in the middle of the center upright, you're just going to slide that through until it's flush on both of these sides. Then, I misspoke earlier, now we're using the largest, smaller bolts, and we're going to line this up. You might have to move the pop pin out of the way, but just line those 2 holes up and just get one side started, and we'll just get the other side threaded also. You might need to play around with this a couple of times, because the last thing you want to do is miss thread and then your hardware gets completely messed up. So just be patient. And once both sides are fastened, you'll be able to move that up and down very easily. Now, the funnest part of installation is the weight plates, arguably the most time-consuming part. So there is a specific way to do the general installation, but how you slide plates on the guide rod is going to be entirely up to you. But one thing that you must do, these rubber stoppers right here have to go on the bottom of the bottom plate. So this is going to be the bottom right here. If I take each weight plate, the top is going to have these little plastic rings on them, and the bottom is not going to have them. This is how you know this side should be facing down. So for this bottom plate, and I'll show in some B-roll footage, but this is going to be the general look of it. Both rubber stoppers are going to be underneath both of those holes, and you're going to continue stacking plates until you get to about 8 or 9, and then we're going to feed the guide rods through and then get the remaining plates on. So behind me, we have about 10 plates inside of the Walrus. Now we're going to be feeding some guide rods through, and then we'll get to the remaining 21 plates and then the top plate on there. But one thing to pay attention to with these guide rods is it does matter which way you put these in. So if we pull these a little bit closer, you're going to see that these guide rods have a little bit of a squared portion right there. And these are going to feed into the top cross member of the Walrus. So just make sure you're paying attention to that. So we'll feed these through, and then I'll show you exactly what I mean. Now, you might need to play around with the plates a little bit since you can't really see where this rod is going. But once you see that it sits below that top cross member and it makes contact with the metal underneath, then you'll know it's in place. There we go. You must have heard right there that it made contact with that bottom cross member. So now we just line these up a little bit more, and we'll get the second guide rod feeding through. And there we go. And these aren't going to go anywhere, so you could grab the remaining plates and feed these through with no problem at all. I went ahead and got the remaining plates on, and now we're just going to have to fasten the guide rods. So remember that squared off portion that I mentioned before? We're going to raise this up and make sure it slots in with the cross member above. And once it does, you could rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise, and then it should lock into place. And then you're going to do the same thing with the other one. Lift up, rotate 90 degrees, and you're good. Then once these are up in the center cross member, these two bolts right up here, I already undid them earlier to make things a little bit easier, but you should do them before, you should undo them before putting these guide rods up in there. Once these guide rods are fastened, you're just going to rotate these bolts clockwise until they catch the guide rod, and then we'll fully bolt them down once we tighten the rest of the machine up. We're about 90% done with the machine. Now, the other 10% is going to be routing the cables, because to a lot of people, this could be the most frustrating part. But with a little bit of patience and this guide, then you should be able to do this no problem. For peace of mind, I had a lot of problems with this when I first put together my first Walrus. But like I said, hopefully this video will make things easier for you. So we're going to start with the bottom cable first. And what we're going to do to make things much easier is on the center upright, we're going to remove the bottom pulley so we could feed the cable through. And you'll know that it's the correct cable for the bottom because you'll see this crimped part right here. It's not going to be the bolt that we're going to use to feed through the top, but this ring that's crimped on the end. And once you've guided that cable through and towards the bottom, one thing I completely overlooked, which is probably where I ran into some problems, is this bottom pulley underneath the center cross member also needs to be removed. But once you've got the cable through there, you could just put that pulley back and then move on to the rest. And while I'm here, I'll just reinstall this middle pulley, because the last thing I want to do is forget a step and then go back and do it again. And just like earlier, you're going to have to remove this pulley right here to feed the remaining cable through the bottom. So we'll just take this and slot that up. Get the pulley channeled with the cable. And then we could just redo, and that'll take care of the bottom cable for now. This top one won't be as bad because you could actually see what you're doing, but it's going to be very similar to the bottom cable where you're going to have to remove some parts and then just reinstall them, but it's just very temporary. So to start, we're going to remove this plastic tube from the front of the shroud, and we're going to take the pulley cable that starts with this bolt and run it over the top. As soon as you have a good amount already up in there, we'll just reinstall this plastic tube. That way, even if this slides back, we're not going to lose it. We really need to pay attention to how we route this cable because there are a few different pulleys here. So you're going to take the cable that we just routed through the front, bring that all the way to the back, and guide that into the back pulley. And we're going to pull it through the cross member if it wants to agree with me. Make sure it's in the channel. So it should be just dangling like that. One of the last components you'll need is this dual pulley system right here. And I've already removed one of them just because we need to. So just put that to the side for now because we'll be putting that back on very shortly. So the dangling part of the top cable, we're going to run that bolt underneath this pulley and it's just going to dangle a little bit. There's a couple more things that we're going to have to remove, but I promise we're almost done with this. So on the bottom pulley of the shroud, above that, there is a plastic tube. So we'll just remove that and put that to the side. And this bottom pulley right here, we will also have to remove in order to route the cable. So we'll just take these out, make sure not to lose any parts. And we're going to take this cable, run this through the bottom, and to make things just a hair easier, we'll run this over the top of this pulley in the center, run this down, and we'll just temporarily lock that in place right there while we get this pulley back to its home. Now we've got that bottom pulley back in, and we can put this plastic tube back as well. Now we're just going to pull this bolt all the way down and secure this into the top plate. And make sure that this ring for the pin is on top of this center pole right here, because there's been several times where I forgot to do this and I've had to undo this top bolt. That's good for now. So we'll just leave that there. I promise you, we're almost done. That bottom cable that we had before, now we're going to fasten it to this dangling pulley up here. So we'll just pop that pulley back into place, make sure that the cable is in its channel, hold that in place. Then we'll get this bolt right through. And now there's just one more step. For the last major part, we're going to grab that bottom cable, take one of the carabiners that's included, attach that, rotate it a little bit, and you might have to play around with the placement of the carabiner depending on how tight you made this bolt down here on the top plate. But for my settings, I'm going to put it on the second hole from the top, and you're going to notice it's a little bit loose. But once you've got that in, you're going to take this trolley, move it down until the cable is taut, and boom, you're pretty much done. Last three details is carabiner on the bottom, carabiner on the top, and then getting all of the plate stack stickers on. You might have to play around with these a little bit, but it's much easier doing it this way instead of doing everything one by one. So that's 10 through 160, and then 170 through 320. So much cleaner than doing this one by one. Now you're ready to attach the lat pull down bar, set an appropriate weight for you, move this to get your legs in there, and you're ready to do some lat pull downs and low rows on the Walrus lat tower low row machine. This has been the instruction guide on how to assemble this fantastic piece of equipment. We're really excited for you to get it out of the crate and put it together yourself. So if you found this video informative, please be sure to drop it a thumbs up. We're really trying to up our game in terms of our assembly videos because we do realize that reading things off of paper might not be the best. So hopefully this guide was very easy for you to follow along. And like I said, if you find it very informative, please be sure to drop it a thumbs up. It helps the channel out a ton more than you think, and it's free. If you have any other videos that you would like us at Fringe Sport to make, please be sure to leave any suggestions down below in the comments. And if you want to see any more of our videos, then please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Slowly running out of breath. Hopefully we'll see you in that next video.
Back to this.